as we flip through the scrapbooks of our lives and look at the old snapshots from our past, we're aware that we've grown and changed. When we look at our personal growth and change over a long period of time, over an entire lifetime, we're taking what's called a lifespan perspective. It's a new perspective, an exciting way to look at our lives as a continuous unfolding story. This is a series about growth, about development, and about change throughout the lifespan. But exactly how and why do we change over the course of a lifetime? It's a complicated question, but we'll have help. Experts in human development, psychologists, social scientists, they'll guide us throughout the series. They'll comment and clarify each of the seasons of life. We'll also meet real people in intimate and revealing profiles, because each life story is ultimately an autobiography, and we've asked these authors to tell us their stories. And we'll discover that their stories are part of our stories, part of the seasons of life. This first program is about infancy and early childhood, the time when the child is too young to tell us his or her own life story, but a time when the foundation for that story is being laid. Our program begins in the countryside in Pennsylvania. Here on this family farm, a story is beginning. It's a simple yet wondrous story that's beginning wherever anyone is awaiting the birth of a child. It's the story of human development, and that's what our series, Seasons of Life, is all about. Our story begins at the Kennedy farm. Jim Kennedy owns the land. His family has farmed here since 1824.
Come on! Come on! Woo!
Today, the Kennedys own 700 acres. Twice a day, they milk over 70 cows. It's one of the largest dairy farms in western Pennsylvania. Jim's oldest son, Jeffrey, and his daughter-in-law, Janice, work on the farm full-time. And in a matter of days, Jeff and Janice are expecting a baby. It will be their first child and the first grandchild for Jim and Rita Kennedy. And as that time approaches, Jim recalls the night Jeffrey was born.
The tractor wouldn't start in the morning, okay? So I'd have Rita come out there and pull that darn tractor for me. And it's cold. And that night, she said, hey, I think we better go to the hospital. Well, at that time, they gave the ladies some, what they call a twilight medicine, you know, it puts you off to sleep and on to sleep. And she went up and finally got down to the place. I said, Rita, did we bring you up here to sleep, or did we bring you up here to have a baby? So in the morning, then we finally got a baby, but we had to get back home here, you know, to get the milking done.
And there's still milking to be done. But now Jeff and Janice have their minds on other things.
We went to the breathing classes so I can have it natural.
Well, they even told us there at the last class that we get to cut the baby's navel cord, and I'm looking forward to that one.
And then I've gone in for 2 sonograms where you can see it moving. And the very first one, it was only about that big. And you could just see the little flick of the heartbeat. That was really neat. And then Jeff went with me for the second one. And he could see its arms and legs moving. It was really neat. And then they give you a picture to take home with you. So I have 2 pictures of him already, or her, whatever it'll be.
I don't care what it is. I just want a happy, healthy little baby. It'll grow up just the same as whether it's a boy or a girl, and I can just hope that it'll follow our tracks and enjoy the farm as much as we do.
The first photo of the new baby for the family album. 3 generations of Kennedys will greet this baby. This family, its beliefs, the shared experiences will help shape its future. We're all born into families with their own traditions, with values that form a strong framework for our life story. Inside this house, the first sound of the seasons of life. Justin Kennedy, 6 pounds, 3 ounces, has come into the world. Justin's life story has begun.
No, don't you do that. Oh, gonna sakes alive. Can't you do like a rabbit with your nose?
In the coming years, how he remembers his story and how he tells it will be affected by the stories his family remembers and tells.
No, he says a hoot with it all.
His great-grandfather, Francis, is the keeper of the oldest memories, the family storyteller. One day, he may tell Justin about his boyhood on the farm.
When I started out, we had a team of horses, a 14-inch plow, and that's how around the field you went. One field down to the other farm. I could show you that. That took 2 days to plow that, no matter how you figured. There's 4 acres in it. You plowed 2 acres, all right. But that was a nice part about that, too. You know, that horse knowed everything. When you'd ring the dinner bell, the horse knowed, hey, stop now, we're going to eat. And you didn't have much to say about it.
Oh, boy.
Pull the blanket over so you don't get them
All dirty, huh? Okay, Squirt.
From his grandfather, Jim, Justin is certain to hear of his family's deep love for their land.
Whenever I was a kid, I was born and raised on the other side of that hill there, down in that valley. And that's where I was born. I was born in a house there. And we always, as kids, we always wanted to come to this place because it was so big. There was 800 acres on it. No one bothered it. And to walk on it and see what's happening here, see all the wildlife, hunt for arrowheads, you tell me. It's great, you know.
Justin will hear not only stories of life on the farm, but stories of death.
About a year before my dad passed away, they bought a little place over at Saxonburg. And that's where we were getting ready for their 50th wedding anniversary. And went over, and Father hadn't come in for lunch yet. And so we went out to look for him, and I looked all around, and I couldn't find him at all. So then I went around a cornfield. And I seen his dog laying up in the cornfield. I went up in there, and there he was laying. He had the corn husker in his hand, ear of corn in the other hand, and his dog sleeping right at his head. But he must have, he was drawed just like he must have had a heart attack and never knowed whatever hit him because he couldn't drop the ear of corn or the corn husker. I often said, you got to leave this world. That's a great way to go.
These stories of life and death, of tradition and belief, will be passed on to the newborn Justin Kennedy. Like all family stories, they're more than simple tales from the past. They're stories to grow up on. John Kotre, University of Michigan, Dearborn.
I think family stories are very, very important. And these stories combine to tell us who we are as a family, what we think about nature, about life, what we think about farming as a way of life. And these stories, when you take them all together, create a kind of web of meaning on which we live our lives. It's like a social womb in which our children can be nourished.
1 week old, Justin is a bit young to understand his family stories, but all the Kennedys, mom included, say Justin is the spitting image of his father, Jeffrey.
Jeff's mom, Monday morning when they come back, she brought a picture with her. She says, "Oh, here, your pictures from the hospital come already." And I opened it and looked at it, and it looked exactly like Justin, but it was black and white, you know. So I said, "This isn't." She said, it was Jeff's baby picture, and it looks exactly like Jeff. So everybody, that's what I said, nobody can say it's the milkman's. It's definitely a Kennedy.
As a baby, Justin looks like his father did. But when he's grown up, will his life be like his father's? Today, experts tell us that some aspects of a baby's temperament, Justin's as well as other babies, are genetically determined. At birth, some babies may appear content and easygoing. Others are restless. They never quite seem to get comfortable. Long-range studies are showing that qualities like these, the building blocks of temperament, can last throughout life. Even in the first week of a baby's life, you can tell something about its temperament, but not about its story, not about how he or she will turn out. Trying to understand the mystery, the wonder of life, researchers have become aware of 3 clocks that affect the way we develop. The first is the biological clock. It governs our physical growth. It's the body's way of keeping time. It determines how long we're in the womb, when we're born, when we die. The biological clock ticks throughout the lifespan, but its strongest influence comes early in life. All human beings share the same timetable for growth. It's part of our genetic makeup.
All right, I'll let you know when I'm ready. Same shot.
The social clock is society's way of keeping time. It tells us what society expects of us and when. Today, the social clock tells us that as children, we're expected to be in school, that in our 20s we should be working and thinking about marriage and a family, that our 70s are a time for retirement, that in middle age we're supposed to be at the peak of our careers and enjoying grandchildren. These are the age norms of the current setting of the social clock, but the settings change with the flow of history. As the 20th century began, new Americans had a different set of expectations. Not every child was supposed to be in school. Many worked in factories and sweatshops. Adolescence, as a separate and unique stage of life, was a new concept. Life expectancy was less than 50 years. There wasn't time for middle age, let alone retirement. There were fewer seasons of life.
Well, sure, you want? Sure. Be careful.
Justin's great-grandparents, Francis and Martha, responded to that old social clock.
I know you got him crying.
I do not.
What's the matter?
Young Justin will respond to the social clock set for his generation.
He does it great on him.
Oh, do I? Well, I'll tell you, I've had a lot more experience than him, too.
Is that right?
I have to get a little basket for him.
At the moment, his major challenge is just to grow. As he grows, the mystery of his life will begin to unfold. In some ways, it'll be like all other stories, and that's because of the biological clock. The social clock will make Justin's story like some other stories, like those of his generation. But Justin's story will also be unique, like no other story, and that's because of a third clock, the psychological clock. The psychological clock is another way to describe the passage of time in our lives. It's an individual's own way of keeping time, our own inner schedule for growth and development.
Oh, no.
The psychological clock drives us to become ourselves. It determines how we move through major passages of life. It expresses our personal sense of the seasons, how old we feel, rather than how old we are. Justin will walk and talk and eventually pass all of life's milestones, not only when his body's prepared, not only when society says he should, but when he is good and ready. At 1 week, Justin's growth is governed by the biological clock. He hasn't felt the pressure of the social clock yet, and he's awaiting a major psychological development, the formation of a deep and long-lasting emotional attachment. It's winter time on the Kennedy farm. Justin is now 5 months old. He's becoming adept at interacting with others, a kind of performer, giving and taking cues. He's discovering that he can have an effect on his surroundings, particularly his mother and father. Dr. Sheldon White, Harvard University.
Babies are born designed to capture the hearts of parents, to signal distress in such a way that parents move towards them. Babies are born prepared to engage with parents using signals and responses that both the parents and the babies are equipped with. It's as though the parents and the child are born knowing how to dance, and then signaling to one another, they begin to dance.
It's a dance that leads to what psychologists call attachment, an emotional tie to a specific, caring adult. At 5 months, the dance is in full swing. A cry and comfort. An invitation, a response.
Where are you going?
It's a rhythm that connects a parent to a child and a child to a parent.
Well, I lay him right down on the couch and tickle him and tease him, and I like to growl and snarl at him. And just, I guess, baby things that I really enjoy them. I've never been around a baby before, and that I can recall of. I mean, my brother is only 12 years old, but still I was a busy kid myself then, never really had the chance to be with him like I am my own boy.
Attachment is a two-way street. Jeffrey and Janice formed a bond with their baby a long time ago, but at 5 months, Justin hasn't fully reciprocated. He'd probably feel secure with almost any adult. In just a few months, that will change. It's spring, and everything on the Kennedy farm seems to be growing. Justin is 9 months old now. He's out of the house more often. His parents are introducing him to more and more sights and sounds and to some unusual sensations.
You're sucking in.
Ew, yucky. Ah, she got your whole hand in.
Justin's sense of attachment is now much more specific. Justin is now attached to... and he's attached to his dad, too. Babies complete the attachment process between 5 and 9 months of age because they've learned that objects and people stay in existence even when they're out of sight. Even though I can't see Dad, he's still here. I can count on that, so I can count on him. To survive, a creature as helpless as a human infant must have an attachment to a caring adult. Professor Yuri Bronfenbrenner, Cornell University.
We find that the most important factor in the development of competence and character, in fact, throughout life, not just in early childhood, is involvement in reciprocal joint activity between people who have an irrational attachment to each other. Now, there were two people who were crazy about each other. Where do you find that? Well, it's hard to find, except in families. There, it's routine. And in general, the most important conclusion that research in the last, say, decade and a half, although it's built up over many decades, leads to is that the family is the most humane, the most powerful, and by far the most economical system known for making and keeping human beings human.
But the American family has changed dramatically in the past few decades as more and more women have gone out to work. In fact, more than half of the mothers of infants work outside the home. Their children need daycare. These parents often wonder whether daycare will weaken the attachment between them and their child. There's another question about attachment. Every working parent asks, will my child be okay with somebody else, especially at daycare centers? This is Diane Templin. She already has a 3-year-old daughter in the Louise toddler program, and now she's enrolling Grant, who's just 6 weeks old. She knows her daughter is thriving, but it's still awfully hard to leave little Grant.
It's very difficult for me as a new mother to leave such a little baby, even though I know that I'm leaving him in very competent hands here at Louise. But nevertheless, it's very trying to have to leave such a little guy in someone else's hands. I'm not 100% sure that this is the best thing for my children. I'm not 100% sure that staying home with my kids would be the best thing. So I think it's just a lot harder during these times to determine what is best for your children when there are so many different options.
But for many working mothers, daycare is not just another option. That's the case with Carolyn Stevens.
You ready for the day? Huh? It's definitely a necessity. Out of a single-parent home, daycare is definitely a necessity. The one reason why I like this center especially is because I can come at lunchtime and spend my time with Brandon. And that way, at least we have time together during the day, and we can become more attached that way. Well, I'm off. Bye, sweetie. Don't pay me any attention. I always have mixed feelings when leaving my child to go to work. Well, see you guys later.
Okay, bye.
Yeah. I just feel so bad about leaving them all day and while I work, but it's essential. I have to work, so I had to leave them. But it's tough. It's real tough.
Currently in the United States, just as in most industrial countries in the world, women are entering the workforce. And parents write to me continually about their concerns about daycare. What they're saying is something bad going to happen to my child because I'm giving him up for somebody else to take care of? The answer really is no. If, in fact, you get someone who will provide excellent daycare, the same kind of care that you would provide yourself. So it's the contact, it's not just the physical contact, it's the emotional contact of the caretaker, and we know that's a critical component of development of life of young kids.
In the United States today, infants can form as many as 3 attachments, one to their mother, one to their father, and one to the babysitter or daycare provider. In other cultures, multiple attachments are looked upon as a kind of insurance policy or safety net for the child. Now, that seems to be the idea here at the Kennedy home, too. Justin has lots of adults to look after him. It's late August now, and a special time at the Kennedys. Justin is 1 year old.
Can you blow it out?
As an adult, Justin won't remember his first birthday or his first year of life. That's because he doesn't yet have the language to store these events in his memory. He'll see lots of pictures and hear lots of stories about what he was like as a baby. Like all of us, Justin will depend on his family's memories to recreate this part of his life. Justin's first year has been important, but exactly how important? How will the subsequent seasons of life be affected by the first year of life? On this one, the experts seem to disagree.
That first year is probably the most important year in the individual's life. That first year sets the stage for everything else to follow. Whatever comes next is not irreversible, and the child is not stuck. There are many paths he can still follow, but we've certainly changed the odds in one direction or another.
How important is it in the sense that there are some things that parents absolutely must do, and if they don't, everything goes to hell? most developmental psychologists believe that children are reasonably well buffered, that if they get anything that approximates reasonably decent treatment, that they can come through. In fact, they can come through very severe stress. Since, I would think that the first year of life is as important as any other year of life, but it is probably not as critical as a few people have said.
This apparent disagreement has a long history and has been strongly affected by the work of Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis. Freud's technique of interpreting dreams and early memories led him to believe that how we ended up in life was often determined by how we began, by what happened to us in infancy and childhood. One who took a different path was Erik Erikson. Still active in his 80s, Erikson is regarded as a pioneer of the lifespan perspective. He created a theory of human development that went far beyond Freud's. Not only were infancy and childhood important, so were adolescence, adulthood, and old age. Bernice Newgarten, the University of Chicago.
Erikson came along and really said, but wait, there is life after 5 and there's life after adolescence. And he said also there's life after 40. He didn't use those words, but he certainly used that concept. And he began to trace what he thought were the major psychological tasks for persons as they grew through adulthood into old age, and talked then about major tasks for the ego or the self. And that changed persons' views in very important ways, so that I think he had an enormous effect on saying lives don't end or get formed or get predictable in the first part of the lifespan.
No one can predict Justin's future. We simply don't know how his story, or any of our stories, will come out. But we do know that he's made attachments that will last a lifetime.
You and I can go, brrr, can't we? All right, all right.
10 months have passed. Justin is 22 months old.
Where's Daddy? Tractor. Where's Pep?
Peppa's tractor.
Yeah, Pep's tractor.
Yeah. Tractor.
Yeah.
Pap's tractor. Some psychologists will tell you that the first combination of words is more important, more uniquely human, than the first word itself.
Poo.
Poo. Poo. Mommy help?
Help.
There.
How much?
Another one? Oh, you want that one on there? Push.
We don't know why language begins to explode at this age, but scientists have observed the same pattern in children all over the world. Many believe that we're born with that ability to acquire language.
All aboard.
Justin's infancy is coming to a close. Oh, he still has that same easygoing temperament he had as a newborn, but now he's got much more personality. And he's starting to put a few words together into little sentences. You know, the ancient meaning of that word infant is not speaking. And since Justin is about to talk up a storm, it's a sign that his infancy, his period of not speaking, is over. Justin Kennedy is about to enter early childhood. In future programs, we'll get to know Kennedys in other seasons. For Justin, these seasons lie just ahead. About 50 miles southeast of the Kennedy farm is the town of Jeannette, population 15,000. Here in the hills of western Pennsylvania, another life story is unfolding. It will be a different story than Justin Kennedy's, a different setting with a different cast of characters. Meet Meredith Wilson. She's 13 months old now. Meredith doesn't have the extended family that Justin does. She's primarily dependent on her parents, Patty, and her husband, Phil, who are both 31. And Meredith has her own temperament.
Hey, Phil, are you up yet? Yes. What are you making out? All right, she's coming.
Meredith is a very demanding baby. She's very active physically, constantly moving. Even when you lie her down to change her diaper, it's a struggle. Simply because she wants to be up and, you know, dancing and reaching and pulling and everything else. But it wears you down after a while.
That's a girl. Where's your belly?
At the age of 13 months, Meredith has come to realize that she is a being in her own right. A self has been born, an I that knows it isn't you. That self will eventually make its own meaning, keep its own time, and write its own story.
Good girl.
Mornings at the Wilson house can be a bit hectic. Both Patty and Phil work.
Are you working a full shift today, or are you going to be home at lunch?
No, I'll be till 4. So
Young Meredith has another attachment besides her mother and dad. While her parents are at their jobs, Meredith spends the day with her aunt.
I should be done around 4 o'clock, so I'll be able to be back. I'll see you later. Bye.
Like the majority of children in America, she waves goodbye to her parents each morning.
Bye-bye. We'll see you later.
The stories that Meredith hears will be different from those of Justin. They may be stories filled with adventure. Patty works for the fire department. After an unpaid maternity leave, she returned to work when Meredith was 5 months old. Patty recalls one way in which Meredith has changed her and Phil's life.
We'd been married 8 years before she was born. So we had a lifestyle pattern. We had a budget and a cash flow, if you want to call it that, established for a long time. And with suddenly half of the income gone, it was a change that we weren't prepared to maintain.
Meredith's life story is sure to be surrounded by pictures. Her father is a photographer for the local newspaper. He works in the field and in the darkroom developing and printing the pictures that will run in the daily paper.
Hi, Angel. How's my big girl?
It's only at the end of the workday that the Wilson family is together again. As new parents, Phil and Patty are discovering that they're changing in response to Meredith. That's a dynamic new way of thinking about human development. Lifespan psychologists say that development is reciprocal. Phil and Patty's behavior is affecting Meredith, but we tend not to think as much about how Meredith is changing Phil and Patty. In a later program, they'll tell us how she's giving a new twist to their life story.
Well, now that I'm 31, I have a little girl, which has changed everything. Because I think my expectations for the future are sort of centered around what I can do for her. So far as I'm making plans, I'm really making them for her.
Alice Rossi, University of Massachusetts.
For many young men, becoming a father is their very first experience in being genuinely and obsessively concerned to protect, to cherish, to care for this other young, fragile child. In my own work, I have seen an increase in what you could call expressivity in men who become fathers. And that may be in the cards for this young daddy.
Phil's pictures of Meredith record her physical growth, the insistence of the biological clock. Inside, the psychological clock adds a new dimension to her sense of self. Meredith has learned that the little girl she sees in the pictures is herself and not some other child. At 2, Meredith takes delight in exploring the world outside herself, in new sights, new smells, new tastes.
I can't believe how big she is.
And Phil and Patty notice something new in her.
She gets more fun as time goes on. She's more of a person. It's easier for me to relate to her.
Go get it, Lane.
If we take our time with her, she'll show us a lot of interesting things, things that we wouldn't have noticed, or nuances on things, or just feelings.
At 2, Meredith's principal psychological task is to strengthen her sense of self, to make it clear that she has a will of her own.
You just got Daddy all wet. You stinker. You stinker.
What you doing up there?
Meredith's a toddler now, and toddlers need shoes. Her biological clock is ticking quickly, and physically, she's growing fast.
That's what the lady's going to do when it's your turn.
Meredith's not only growing physically, but socially, too.
That's the baby's bottle.
A baby bottle still looks good, but the social clock is ticking. It says, act your age.
Honey, I don't have a bottle. I just don't have a bottle today, because you're getting too big for a bottle. I know.
Meredith is already too old for something.
Ready for a pretzel. Okay, you want to ask her for a pretzel? Say please. Please. Okay, you go ask nice. Say pretzel, please.
She's at the age where it's time to assert, I'm not you, I know what I want.
Oh, well, I know she's going to be an independent person. And I bless her for it. But it's tough on me now already. It's going to be hard to let go. But she's already showing me when to let go. When she's ready to try something new.
Like all of us, Meredith and her mother alternate between attachment and separateness, between dependence and independence. That independence in a toddler is sometimes called the terrible twos. But according to experts in child development, the terrible twos are a healthy sign. Janice Gibson of the University of Pittsburgh.
The child initially begins by becoming very difficult. What the child is learning is that he or she is totally independent of the mother, and the first step is to begin to practice what he in fact can do without the mother. The favorite word, and often the first word for many kids, is no. And it's no because it's in absolute opposition to what the primary caregiver wants, and it's a sign of independence, and it's a sign of development.
As Meredith grows, so does her sense of self. Her growth of self is deeply tied to her ability to use language. Meredith is developing a growing body of commentary on herself. She can tell you that she's a good child, just as her parents say, that she's a girl and different from her new baby brother. Now, Meredith's a little over 4 years old, and she's still active.
Go outside and play?
Her little brother Adam is now 1.5 years.
Go out. You waving
Phil and Patty feel they've raised Meredith and Adam the same way, but their personalities seem so different. They have different temperaments. Adam will sit quietly in his swing for long periods of time, but Meredith just can't stay still.
Meredith is a spotlighter. She loves the spotlight. Adam is an observer. He loves to watch. And I think that Meredith was always early to crawl, early to walk, early to do anything that I could not imagine she could do. She's always been very physically inclined.
And she doesn't seem like you can't take her out in the backyard and have her run around for 20 minutes and then she's quiet. She's pretty constant.
Some of the most important research in infant and child development today underscores what parents like Patty and Phil know intuitively. Children are different. Temperaments endure.
Babies are not all alike. We have quite clear evidence now from a number of laboratories showing that there are consistent differences in the ways in which babies react with other people, their emotional control, the way in which they approach new situations, and those differences can be found in babies from the 1st to the 5th year of life. running like a thread, differentiating babies across the early part of the lifespan.
2 mornings a week, Patty takes Meredith to a nursery school. Now, Meredith is moving beyond her family.
Okay, let's go.
The cast of characters in her life story is expanding.
Good morning, everybody. Hello, Tita. Oh, hi. I'm glad to see you. Bye. I love you.
After saying goodbye to her mother, Meredith joins the other girls. That's not unusual. By the age of 3, children know that people are either male or female, and they know what they are. And when given the opportunity, they sort themselves into same-sex playgroups.
Females in our society, as in all other societies in the world, tend to play female stereotypic games. These include games associated with domesticity, taking care of other children, doing household tasks, caring for babies in particular. Boys tend to enjoy playing outside and playing aggressive games. It's impossible to say whether or not our teaching of male and female stereotype play is playing the major role in this extremely important difference in behavior, or whether some of that may in fact be innate.
Hey, gosh! Coffee for my baby, coffee for me. Can you find some more energy?
By the age of 3, children know whether they're boys or girls, and they act like it. But they've also developed in another way. They can remember things and tell you about events in their lives. The beginning of what the researchers call autobiographical memory.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Autobiographical memory blossoms around 3 or 4 because children finally have the mental tools to remember events in their lives and the language skills to communicate these events.
You can read her a book, and then she'll know the story so that she can sit down with it and turn the pages, and she knows what happened on that page. In the same way with books, there were books that I could recite. Madeline is, one, where, you'd get to, Patty and I would be in a car and we'd say, 12 little girls in 2 straight lines, blah, 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 and go through the whole thing. And we knew the whole book off by heart because she wanted that book. We'd read that every night. An elephant, said Bernie. Only an elephant's foot could break a wagon in half like that.
As human beings, we're all storytellers, which means we put the experiences of our lives in an order that makes sense. But like Meredith, our autobiographical memory doesn't start till about the age of 3 or 4. Possibly her earliest memories will be of these intimate moments with her father.
Do you want those animals to keep breaking your toys? Bernie asked. I'll hide all my toys, Walter said desperately. Then they'll get angry, Bernie said, and they'll come and eat you up.
Psychologists say that our first memories don't have that much to do with our childhood. They have everything to do with our adult lives, that we dip back into the well of experience and draw out the memories which make sense in terms of our present selves.
Freud said that what happened in the early years determines how I turn out today. Okay? What I'm saying here is that as we try to remember our lives, as we reconstruct our lives, we get some perception of who we are now, and then we select, with an unconscious eye, some memory that goes to the very beginning of our lives as we can remember it, that symbolizes who we think we are today. It may be, and I believe this to be true, that very often your selection of this first moment to remember in your life says a lot about who you are today and about how your story is coming out today.
And a mug of warm cocoa.
In future programs, we'll hear a number of people tell their stories, stories whose opening scenes revolve around parents and families.
I remember clearly the day I went to her and said, "Grandma, your apron pocket is loose." And she just reached down and ripped it off.
I played in the streets, and my mother would call me through the window. And she would call me in Yiddish, of course.
But we were sitting on my bed, it was just myself and my mother, and she asked me, "What are we gonna do?"
I remember it was around a Christmas time, and I'd asked my mother, "Well, Mommy, when's Daddy coming to bring us our presents?" And she'd look at me.
I'll never forget one day I was walking home from school, and just as I crossed over the railroad track, I saw an ambulance go by, and I had this terrible feeling.
And I remember sitting in the back seat of our Chevrolet and waiting and waiting and waiting and asking, "Is this it? Is this it?"
Well, anyway, Mama had a purple petticoat, and it rustled when she walked. It was taffeta with a ruffle at the bottom. You know how a pink edge is? Well, anyway.
It appears that the question, "Who am I?" can often be answered by going back to our first memories of life, to the age when we started to become skillful and confident in describing our experience.
Can you remember a vacation that maybe you went to that you really enjoyed a lot?
And I liked these mosquitoes buzzing around.
You don't like the mosquitoes buzzing around?
Yes, I do.
You do?
I like them biting me so I can scratch the mosquito bites.
Oh my, I don't like scratching mosquito bites.
I do.
You do, huh? Elizabeth, what kinds of things do you like to do here?
Go outside and play on the swing with Mariah pushing me fast.
Mariah pushes you fast on the swing, doesn't she?
Sometimes I go cuckoo and knock myself out.
We're going to talk
Today, these fragments of recollection are the very beginnings of autobiography for these youngsters. Years from now, some memory from this time of life, a memory of mosquito bites or of a move to a new home or the birth of a new brother or sister, will become the earliest memory we have.
At this age, kids know what a story is. They love stories. They love to listen to stories. They have the ability to tell stories of things that happened to them. So they can tell you stories from a life, although they don't yet have a story of a life. Sometimes it's easier for them to tell a story with pictures than it is to tell a story with words.
When you're done, you tell me, and when I'm done, I'll tell you, okay? Okay, Lindsay? Okay.
Children form pictures of themselves in the early years, and if they can't tell you what they see in words, they can tell you a great deal through art. In infancy and earliest childhood, the authorship of a life story is in the hands of others, parents, grandparents, daycare workers, babysitters. But now, we join in. Nancy Smith, an art educator in Boston, uses her knowledge of human development to teach art. Before they actually pick up a brush, the children think of ideas for their paintings.
I like to watch TV right in my mother's room.
In your mother's room?
I like to go horseback riding, but I can't do it because my mother and father don't have enough money. But
the emphasis is on what the child thinks is important.
And my mother's making books, and also she's writing, and so we can have a lot of money to buy a farm.
Oh, and then you could have lots of horses.
Yeah.
Preschool children often choose family themes for their pictures. A 4-year-old artist called his painting, "Me Upstairs in Bed." It shows the safety and security of being at home. These are pictures which, Smith says, reflect actual events. For instance, what the loss of a pet means to this youngster.
This is my dog that died a few months ago. And once me and my mom and my sister and
A lot of people.
my family, we found a water slide.
Oh.
We got up the stairs, just slid down. It was so fun.
These children are almost unable to not tell you the whole story. They want the full story in the picture. So you have, I can ride my bicycle, or I can make a goal playing soccer, or I can do hopscotch. This is what I'm competent at, or this is what's grand about my family. So it's that statement, that communication both to the self and to the rest of the world that creates growth. It inspires growth.
What is that? Where is the mouse? That is not a mouse. Yes, that is my hair. I got a big...
What this is the roots of it all. This is the beginning of it all. This is a great, enormous tree, and these are its very little first emergings.
Right there, and I'll put more, but it's
In the beginning of life, it's our families who write the stories. But then we grow up and we start to do it for ourselves. And in no time at all, it seems, we're ready to take a big step, scary step. And that is to leave the farm or the apartment or whatever we've known as home and go to school. Just down the street is the next chapter in the story of our journey through life. That step is about to be taken on a September morning in this apartment in Roxbury, Massachusetts. It's the first day of school for Jamila Johnson. She's 6. She lives with her grandmother, Harriet Lyons.
Grandma's got more jitters than you have.
The jitters often occur on a child's first day at school. Both Harriet and Jamila are aware that this is a rite of passage, a day when Jamila leaves the security of early childhood to begin a new season.
Makes you pretty, even prettier. Can't go a long time without getting your hair combed anymore.
Yeah.
Can you remember?
Yes.
There you go. You do that like a veteran already. I'm proud of you. Okay, that's it. And we're going.
As she leaves the familiarity of her apartment, Jamila probably has mixed feelings.
Wait till we get out here. You sing.
One adult who knows a lot about how children feel about going off to school is Fred Rogers of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. As a caring citizen of a famous neighborhood, he has always been concerned with the uniqueness of the developing young person. In the neighborhood of make-believe, Fred uses puppets he's created to put children in touch with their own feelings and with the outside world. Fred, can you say that there are some important do's or don'ts for parents as they send their children off to school for the first time?
I feel that the best thing that parents can do for their children is to listen to them and to help them to express what their feelings might be. Ask them such things as, have you ever been to school before? What do you think it's going to be like? Who do you think's going to be with you? And questions like that allows the child to start to say what really is inside, rather than, oh, it's going to be a wonderful experience, you know, it's just going to be great. Oh, well, when I went to school, I made all 8. You know, the very, very best thing that we can do is to listen first, and then tell much later.
Attention! Attention!
What for, Lady Elaine?
Oh, just trying to get everybody in shape for school.
In this scene from one of Mr. Rogers' daily PBS programs, Lady Elaine is not listening to what Prince Tuesday has to say.
I don't know. But you have to know you can't go off to school not knowing everything. They're going to be ready, and I'm going to make them ready.
I don't think I want to go to school.
Of course you do.
Fred, how important, how significant is that first day when a child is kind of launched out of the cocoon into school?
Well, any new step that we take, David, I'm sure you've known that in your life. Even if it's scary to begin with, even if it's hard, once you've accomplished it, you feel as if you've grown. And there's no better feeling in life than to realize, hey, I was able to do it. And tomorrow, I might even do it better.
Infancy and early childhood, a time filled with tomorrows, a time of tremendous physical growth. It's also a time when the foundation of our life story is being laid, when we discover the self and when our earliest memories are formed. In the next program, Childhood and Adolescence, we'll see what happens on Jamila Johnson's first day of school. We'll meet other young people, teenagers, trying to find out who they are, what they want to do, and how they fit into the adult world. They'll tell us their stories, and as they do, we'll discover that their stories are part of our story, part of the seasons of life.
What?